Outstanding.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ian Murray. I'm the president here at SpotOn Productions. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the SpotOn Spotlight, where we have candid conversations with leaders in business. I'm excited to have today's guest join me, Billy Southerland, who is the CEO of IronRoad. Billy, thanks for joining me.
Ian, what's up, my brother? Great
How are
to
you,
be
sir?
here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
I'm
So
doing good. I'm doing better now. I'm talking to you.
tell me about IronRoad. IronRoad's a PEO. What is a PEO? What do you guys do?
You know, we make life easier for like that small to medium-sized business. So we work with companies typically anywhere from 10 employees all the way up to the largest client we've worked with has got almost 3,000 employees. And so many of the things that they have to do as an employer, they can outsource to us. And then in the midst of outsourcing that to us, they also can pay for the services that we offer through the group buying power that we offer through benefits and workers' compensation. So we bring all these small companies together. We go out and we purchase insurance on their behalf, workers' compensation on their behalf. And so it really turns out to be a really effective way for them to manage costs in their business as well as risks. So, yeah, in a nutshell, that's what PEOs do.
And that's really a people business.
We're a professional employer.
There you go. And that's I think what brings us to today's topic is being in the people business, and we're talking about servant leadership today. So you and I talked, and you said your journey really started kind of with Young Life and your family's insurance business. So tell me about kind of how that experience shaped your belief in servant leadership.
Well, frankly, my belief in servant leadership has always been grounded in my faith. So I believe we were made by a God whose son was Jesus Christ, who modeled life and what life's supposed to look like. And the life he modeled is really very different than what we hear today. I think today what society tells us is, take care of yourself, go get your own. And you see a lot of that in business. And, I'm sure that produces fruit in different capacities. But my belief is to really find joy and to really find purpose in what you're doing. I think we were made to serve. The Son of God came here to serve, and so we came here to serve. So we simply take that principle and implement that in what we do in trying to be a professional employer. We don't always do it perfect. We don't have everybody here on the same page. Not everybody here does it for the same reason. But it is the core value that drives the service that we provide to our clients. And that's the bottom line. And I saw that done really well in Young Life. Young Life's a phenomenal parachurch organization that's touched millions of lives across the globe. And I had a chance to serve as a volunteer leader for 5 years here in Cincinnati, developed tons of relationships with many kids and people throughout the community, and then went on staff in Columbus for a couple years and saw firsthand what modeling that life to young people does. So I'd say that was my training ground.
That's very cool. So a lot of leaders struggle with kind of how to integrate service leadership. It sometimes can seem like maybe a daunting endeavor to say, okay, I'm going to really be held to this standard. What steps have you taken at IronRoad to really embed servant leadership into the culture of the company?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it is daunting, because what people are hearing, especially if you talk about people today trying to hire a younger workforce, it is all about finding out what is best for you. And to think about communicating to a potential person that's coming on board, hey, here's our mentality. Here's what we believe. We believe if you want to be great, you figure out how to serve somebody else. I mean, it flies in the face of what society says. And so I don't think there's any way to really implement that outside of just being completely transparent and honest about what you think and believe. And so for us, for me, that has been to communicate upfront my why, which I just communicated to you. It's faith
Mm-hmm.
in Christ. And it is the belief in regards to what life that brings. Now, I also think that that creates a culture that people want to be a part of. You know, I mean, our focus isn't just serving our clients. We're working really hard at trying to figure out how to create an environment where we serve the people we work with. And we do that really well in certain areas, and we don't do that very well in certain areas. We're all people, right? We're all broken.
Mm-hmm.
We got good days and bad days.
Yeah.
And so that's not an easy thing. But one of the things we do to try to keep people on track is we run a servant leadership class, which really is no more than a informal Bible study, you know, where we're looking at the life of Christ and what he did and how he lived. And we do that on Thursdays at 11 o'clock, where we invite, it's not a mandatory thing, but our employees are welcome to come, and our clients are welcome to come. And so we have people that, you know, join remote on a weekly basis. And that's formally, that is a big piece of what we do. Additionally, one of the things we've done is we've gone through an exercise of trying to identify people's strengths, and we're working through now in groups, making people aware of how people are geared. You know, how is Ian gifted? What is it about Ian that naturally he's built for? What are his top five? Those are what we're focusing on, your top five. And then trying to empower you in those, you know, your job, line up those gifts with what you're in the midst of your job that you're responsible for here at IronRoad. And what that does is it, you know, allows you to be working in something you're passionate about, because your giftedness goes hand in hand with what you're passionate about. And so taking those tests, recognizing those things, and working through those things, I think are all things that help build that community of servant leadership.
That's awesome. So you heavily invest in your people to figure out who they are and help them to be successful in their roles. So you talk about.
Yeah, there's no
Sorry,
doubt
go
about
ahead.
it. I think at the core of I yes, absolutely we do. At the core of the servant leadership, it has to start with your internal people. You have to be committed to and serving them well, putting them in front of yourself, and modeling that. And like I said, we're good at that some days. When I say we, I mean me. And you know, you go through phases. Let me know if you arrive. Anybody out there, because I've had my ups and downs as a believer, and so I am not here proclaiming to have figured it out. Far from it. But what we find out is we serve a God that is so gracious. He says, all right, you know, kind of like you were talking to me about your kids, right? It's like, okay, big guy, you're working on potty training with your youngest. You're like, hey, he
Challenge.
thinks if he sits down, he did his job, he gets his treat. Got to leave a deposit. But you're patient because you love him, and God's patient with us. And that's amazing. I mean, that's amazing that we get to wake up and know that the God that created everything we see, it's like, he's like, man, I messed up again. And he's like, Billy, oh, it's all right. Come here. Let me dust you off. Sit back on the toilet. I got you. Let's try to leave a little gift this time.
So how do you balance that? You talk about grace. How do you balance grace as a servant leader with accountability?
Questions, bro.
I think you faded out there for a second. How do you balance grace with accountability?
You still there?
I'm still here. Can you hear me? You're back.
Sorry, buddy. Don't know what happened there.
No worries. It's the internet and it's live, so it is what it is. So the question I was asking is, so you were talking about grace. How do you balance grace with accountability?
Man, you ask all the hard questions. I mean,
These are
daggone,
good.
why don't you just get right down to it, bro? I mean, it's hard. It's hard because at some point you have to draw the line, right? At some point you have to say, hey, this isn't working, and I have to lovingly say, there has to be an account of, in order to protect the group, there has to be accountability. And so balancing that is a difficult thing. I would say over the years, I have erred on the side of grace, probably because I've needed it more than anybody else I know. And that has created a very difficult situation for our company. That almost always that lack of accountability and more grace, which can be perceived as a loving thing to do, is really a very unloving thing to do for the community, for the group of people. Because when you have people that are performing and doing what they're supposed to do, and you allow people that aren't performing to continue doing what they're doing, you create angst among team members. And that's hard. And so I think that starts with you got to start with recognizing it. You have to get people around you. One of the things that we've been able to do is I have people around me now on our leadership team that are gifted in those areas. Like they may not be as much on the grace side and more on the accountability side. So I think we balance each other a little bit. A couple of those people, Amanda Holbrook, that has come in to be our COO. She brings an experience that I never had in corporate America. Whitney Calgren, who is very disciplined, gifted, performer, the most loyal person you'd ever meet in your life, has been here with me for 15 years. They are sounding boards that help me see more clearly. So, there's scripture that says there's wisdom in an abundance of counselors. And so I think together, coming together and making sure we're balancing one another, and then wherever we agree or disagree, whatever we land on, we go forward together. We lock arms and say, okay, I think this is wrong, but this is the direction we're headed, and I'm on board. And so I think that's critical. It's having a group of people that help you make those decisions that really help you land in a place that's healthiest. Because it's not easy. Your question's a great one, and I don't know that there's any formula for it, because it's not like God puts if what you're trying to follow is scripture, it's not like there's a limit on grace, because there's not.
Yeah.
We have to be repentive, which means there needs to be change involved in our behavior. I don't know about you, though. I've continued to go back to the same behaviors again and again. and I've needed to repent again and say, okay, this time I mean it. And so I have a hard time balancing that. So I think surrounding yourself with people that say, no, this is not good for everybody else, this has to stop, is critical as far as that's concerned.
So that's a great point servant leadership is really about modeling the way. And it sounds like you've got a great team that does that internally. When you look at, I've heard you say that serving customers isn't optional at IronRoad. What does that look like in action from a servant leadership standpoint, how you serve customers?
Yeah. So I think that's more of a position of attitude. So when we get a call, when we get an email, when we are on site, face to face with our clients, the piece that is not negotiable is the attitude that we bring, which is we're here, first of all, to seek to understand before being understood. It would be, especially when you're dealing with areas of business that, our people they're specialists in. They understand the way benefits work, for example. And so many times we may be talking to someone that is sideways about their benefits because they're in the midst of pain, either them or loved ones going through something, and they're upset about the way the bill, let's say, was adjudicated. And it may have been done correctly, and we may know that, but they don't understand that. They don't live in that world. So the demand is that we show up there with the attitude of seeking to understand before being understood. So before we start teaching, let's try to understand what this person is doing, what they're feeling, and why, and then approach that conversation with okay, Ian's got an issue here. I'm here to serve him. What is the best way for me to be able to communicate to get Ian from point A to point B so that I've solved the problem for him and his family? And that's a non-negotiable for us. I mean, they don't. Not everybody here believes what I believe about Jesus Christ, and that's okay. That's cool. We actually want it that way. But they do have to buy into the fact that we are here to lead through servant leadership because we believe that that is that we don't believe that will be what we stand this business on.
That's awesome. I love that approach, especially because it sounds like in some of those situations you described, it's a difficult emotional situation for someone. So to really understand where they're coming from and to lead them to a solution that understands that, I
Yeah,
think is powerful for customer relationships.
yeah, and the alternative is they're talking to an insurance company.
Yeah.
I mean, and think about that. I mean, you may get a different person every time. So you said, what does a PEO do? That's a great like example right there of a difference between a company, let's say, that's got 100 people that's gone out and bought insurance through Anthem or United Healthcare, whoever it is. Brokers are they don't make enough commission to be able to provide the service in many scenarios that a company like an IronRoad does. So they're forced to have employees call the companies to adjudicate claims or to walk through, something that was, a difficult scenario. And not that there's great brokers and they serve a great purpose. I'm a huge broker fan. But it's just a different model. And so when you have someone there that can walk through that and that person is like, okay, I'm here to serve Ian.
Mm-hmm.
He's in a rough spot here. It makes a big difference. I think it makes a big difference culturally for the clients that we serve, which is why the people that we try to market to, Ian, are they're employers of choice. And all that means is that they believe their people are the most important part of their business. And so,
So
yeah,
servant leadership really helps you attract the kind of customers you want to work with as well, not just because of the way that you serve those customers.
that's a great point. When Amanda got here, she let go 40 some odd clients of
Oh,
ours,
wow.
which I thought she was crazy, and I about had a heart attack. And but she was right, and a big piece of that was just they weren't aligned with what we think, what's important to us. Which maybe they're right and we're wrong, but it wasn't a good fit either way because we weren't on the
Yeah.
same page.
So as you look at, traditional business metrics exist to measure a lot of things in business, but I feel like servant leadership is probably a little bit harder to kind of put your finger on the pulse. How do you measure servant leadership, see that it's working for your company? What kind of indicators are you looking for?
Yeah. I don't know that there's other than, the one-on-ones, the satisfaction that you get from clients, the stories that you hear, that there's a metric that we can look at. We measure, we have a system that we look at the communications between our people and our clients, that we can look at it on a daily basis to be able to look and to understand how we're doing, what those conversations are like, and how long they take to resolve. So we can see we can see it in the action of resolution. But it's a hard thing to measure. I think it's more of a pulse of a culture pulse, you know?
Yeah.
And part of that I think is measured by, for me anyhow, and I don't know if this is right or wrong because it's a difficult time for people to always make it, but I can't help but look and say, okay, who comes to our servant leadership class? Who's interested in hearing from, the founder of the company in regards to what he thinks about in regards to us moving forward well as an organization in regards to servant leadership. So that's one measurement that, at least in the back of my mind, whether it should be or shouldn't be, is there. Um, but I think the ticketing system and the ability to look at conversations, and I spend a lot of time out with clients, talking to clients. Our clients tend to become, we're still, as we grow, as an organization, we're still very in tune with the relationships with our clients, and so get a lot of feedback from them, which is really healthy.
As you've rolled out servant leadership to employees, have you seen personal transformations in employees who kind of embraced servant leadership? Has it changed other parts of their life?
That's a great question. Man, I'd love to be able to say yes to that. Um, that's a great question. That's a very convicting question. Um, I don't know if I could say that. I'd have to think about that.
Okay.
I wish so much that I could say yes to that. And that's probably more of a function of my own consistency in leadership than anything else. But I would have to believe that the time that we've spent together talking about the things that matter in life, our faith, have in some way had impact. But I don't know that I could point to it and say, "Wow, this has impacted um, Fran," and I can see how it's impacted Fran. I don't know that. I wish I could say that, but
Okay.
I don't know. Good question. Thank you for that.
So let me ask this then. So for somebody who's watching this, if a leader thinks they've seen value in what we've talked about today and they want to start embracing servant leadership, where do you start? How do you start implementing that?
Here's what I think. It comes from the inside out, right? So if it's not here, if it's not a part of the fabric of who you are, um, I think it's a very difficult thing to try to demand. I mean, you could implement it like you could implement any other core value and hold people accountable to it and measure it and begin to look and see what the results are, what happens, right? But I don't think it's until it's a part of who you are and a big part of your belief system. Um, I, I wouldn't recommend doing it. you know, um, if you don't believe in the fruit that follows because of the conviction that you have in the lifestyle. And I'm going to read something to you. Can I read
Yeah,
this?
absolutely.
All right. So I was reading this morning. Here's what Tim Keller said. All
Okay.
right. Tim Keller, you know Tim Keller?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, ancient wisdom taught that you would thrive as a person only if you put the needs of your family and community above your own self interest. Our modern culture rejects that entirely. We're told, quote unquote, be true to ourselves, to decide who we want to be, and then to demand that our community and family recognize and honor that, regardless of its impact on relationships. Today, we sacrifice the good of the group for the absolute freedom of the individual. The result is an increasing number of people who feel disconnected and lonely. So I would say, in answer to your question, unless you can recognize what Tim just said
That's powerful.
as truth, as powerful stuff, run from it. Because the majority of people are going to be hearing, be true to yourself, be true to yourself. They're not doing this for you. They're not doing that for you. And, it's like people that go to church and say, I didn't like that. Well, is it a function of the way the message was communicated, or is it a function of the heart that showed up to listen? There's the question. And I think we serve ourselves better as we look inside. We reflect on, okay, what am I bringing to the table? And how can I make a difference? I think if you can get a group of people together that are willing to do that, to be gracious, because people are going to screw up, and then to show up with a heart of reflection and one that wants to give, you're going to start doing some things. That's powerful.
That's a great, that quote is a great summary on kind of all the things we've talked about. And I've heard you say before that servant leadership isn't just it's not a leadership style, it's a way of life. You have to make a firm commitment, put a stake in the ground, and decide that serving others is going to be the foundation of your leadership. So like you said, if it's not something that's in you, it's not going to happen.
100%. Yeah. You just can't. It's like, trying to take a 120-pound guy, putting him on the Eagles offensive line and saying, go block those
Good
guys.
luck.
You got it, man. You got it. Come on. You can do it. Come on. Boom.
That's very powerful. So let me ask you this then. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received, or your favorite piece of advice to share?
Oh, man. I would say keep going. Keep going. Just keep going. Everybody that I know that has, and maybe this statement that my pastor says, I really hold on to and cling to. Everybody that we know is going into, in the middle of, or coming out of something. And people, so that's true for anybody that's might listen to our conversation today. So if I've seen people that are riding really, really high on life, and they're getting ready to go into something. I've seen people that are ready to cash it in and say, I give, and things get better. God doesn't give up on us. People give up on us. God doesn't give up on us. Keep going. If you don't have faith, ask him for it. Ask him to help you see. Ask him to let you see. Because I believe in the midst of whatever circumstance we're in, he will work for his glory and our good. And there are circumstances people are in right now, and they're like, how could you even have the gall to say that? And having been in circumstances that feel like you can't get out of, I believe it to be true. I believe that regardless of the pain that we're in the middle of, that God will work for our good in his glory. So that would be, and I guess I would end it by saying, be gracious. Be gracious to people. We've been given a ton of grace. Be gracious. I mean, you have to set your boundaries, but be gracious.
Some deep insights this morning. It's a lot to take in.
It's a lot to take in, baby, but that's what's in there. You ask the questions, that's what's in there.
That's awesome. Well, Billy, thank you so much for sharing today. Where can people find you online? How can they connect with you if they want to learn more or interested in connect with you on servant leadership?
Yeah, anytime. Reach out. I mean, you can get me through our website, IronRoad.us. And I think my all my contact information's on there. So yeah, anytime I'm happy to talk to anyone anytime about it. And Ian, thank you. I'm proud of you, man. This is cool. I'm proud of you. Keep rolling, bro. Keep going.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Billy.
Yeah,
Appreciate having me on.
get that potty training down.
I'm trying, man. Those kids, got to give them grace. A lot of grace.
There you go. There you go. Touche. All right, buddy.
All right.
Enjoy
Thanks,
your
Billy.
day. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Bye.